know you're all about acquisitions and systems and operations, but if you could just give everybody a little background, like how long you've been in real estate, what you've got going on. I know you've got some coaching going on, you got some events, but just, give everybody a little background if you could.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, first of all, appreciate you having me on. No question on that, man. I started in this business. Actually, it's in 1994, so it's been 27 years of this year. So
Nice.
been doing it a long, long time, and it just kind of taken a step back in time when I look at this. Back in it was probably 1993. I was actually working with my father in an electrical contracting business over in Springfield, Ohio, and that's actually where I was born and raised at, is up in that area. And I was really we were working the electrical contracting business, and then we had a general contractor that we done a lot of work for. One day he decided to close his doors to his little business, and it really had a major impact on our little business. And in fact, taking it back, I think he owed us probably a little over $60,000 at that time. And that, you take it back in the 90s, that's even bigger hit compared to today. So, and we just weren't able to recover from that. Like, we were just in a position where it was just one thing after another, and I ended up going bankrupt because of that. And I was like, man, what am I going to do next? And I was trying to figure this out. Of course, everybody in the family told me to go out and, try to get a job and all that stuff. And I saw an advertisement actually on TV because, back then we didn't have everything with phones and all the social media and all that stuff. So I saw an advertisement on TV about an upcoming real estate seminar in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I was like, okay, I'm going to check this out. So I went to the seminar. And I had no idea how I was going to do anything from it. In fact, I ended up borrowing my mom and dad's credit cards to be able to go to the training. So I went to the training. Yeah, I went to the training. And after I went to the training there, it was, I sat there for 3 days learning a lot of cool stuff. And I said, man, I think I can make this work. Well, I came back and, I was still trying to scratch my head on all this. There was so much overload. And I ended up hiring a mentor. Well, the mentor I had to borrow my mom and dad's cards again for that. So it was kind of, crazy and stuff. But I had, what I had to do, I had to focus on generating cash and cash now, because I had something called monthly bills, which a lot of people that are watching this are very familiar with that. And I had to take care of that. And so what I had to do is I had to go into grind mode, man. I had to go out there and start basically generating cash now. And what I jumped into immediately was the wholesale side of things. And basically I went out there and just started finding deals. I went into a lot of war zones, and I was just going in there basically controlling pieces of junk and then selling that junk to other people. And, I pick up $1,500 here, $2,000 here, and I just continued to grow that. And, and it's kind of fast forward on that a little bit more. I got to the point where I was, this was rolling into the year 2000. I was, I had got to the point where I was cranking out a pretty good steady flow of deals. We had an office in our home over in Springfield there. And on top of that, we started doing rehabs too. Because I looked at, wow, everybody else is doing them. Why can't I do rehabs? So we decided to jump into the rehab business. So that was kind of the next evolution. Now, some people that are probably going to watch this know a little bit of my story on things, but I had a life-changing situation come up in the year year 2000. My son was born, and wife and I just moved into a brand new home, and we were super excited about it. We just built the dream home we wanted, and everything was cooking along good. And then all of a sudden, during the pregnancy of my son being born, my wife started having some complications, and we ended up going to the hospital 2 or 3 times, and then they ended up admitting her. Well, he ended up being born premature, but they said, I still remember this day, the doctor saying, your son will be fine, but what I'm really concerned about is your wife. And they basically took her down for a CT scan, and within 2 hours after my son was born, in year 2000, I found out my wife had cancer within 2 hours.
Wow.
And yeah, it was, just changed everything. And it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, here it was, we were celebrating the birth of our son, and 2 hours later, we found out my wife had cancer. And, just to kind of share with you, Mike, a little bit more on this. What happened after that, it was just one complication after another. And that was actually a kidney cancer. And she actually ended up being treated at Children's Hospital in Columbus because it was a childhood cancer. And
Wow.
she was treated there as an adult. Well, it was one complication, like I said, after another. And I ended up staying over there in Columbus because I never knew if she was going to live to the next day or not. And I ended up moving into the Ronald McDonald House over in Columbus, living in the Ronald McDonald House for 4 months. And my wife was in the hospital for 4 months straight before we were able to get her home. And then that rolled into the year 2001. And we were in a position where, we got her home, but she was bedridden, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. She was on dialysis because they had to remove both of her kidneys, and we were just. And here, I was trying to focus on I had a business I was trying to take care of. I had a newborn baby, and my wife, and it was, unbelievable what you can go through. Well, within about 2 months after being home that year, we got home early. We got home in March. We had some additional tests done and found out the cancer came back already. And at that time, they told us to call in hospice. And so 10 months after my baby boy was born, my first wife, Jennifer, passed away at age 34.
Really sorry to hear that, man. Damn.
Yeah, it was, unbelievable. And Mike, I haven't shared this with people because I think a lot of times people look at individuals like myself and they see where I'm at now, but they don't see what I went through to get there and everything else that happened in my life. And, it took me about 2 years to the point of really getting functioning again. But, if you think about it too, man, it's this real estate business is what kept my family supported during that time. Because I had a lot, I had some rental properties and things I built up. And you look at if somebody else took, basically took off from their job for 2 years, it would financially ruin them. And I was able to continue to support my family and just try to get myself to the point where I was functioning again. And from there, Mike, I did end up getting remarried. I moved to where I live now, which is Germantown, Ohio, which is just around the Dayton area. I got from that point, and then I ended up being in a position where we ended up building the business back up again. I built it really to a large level on the renovation side. And we had probably 15, 16 people working for us. I think we had 4 full-time project managers. I also got into some multifamily, bought a lot of rentals, even done some commercial. I was doing some Family Dollar, General Dollar stores. And the thing is, Mike, what happened though, I got to the point where I actually just hated it. I just hated what I had created in the business. And I realized that I was in a position where, I was just really becoming a professional deal chaser instead of really building a business.
Right.
And so one day we just went in and I said, this is it. And I just kind of drew a line down the center of things. And I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. And we ended up cleaning house pretty well with the majority of the team at that time, and realized that I really wanted to build a business where it wasn't all about me, and I could build something that could actually grow and scale and build it up to the point where I wasn't involved in every single moving part. So that's how I kind of built this thing up. And then fast forward to today, Mike, what I've built up now is we really have a very large wholesale operation. that does an average of about 18 to 20 deals a month. And
Nice.
I'm completely removed from that on the operational side. I do zero on the operational side. I have a lady that is my COO. She runs the organization. I have, team of acquisitions reps, dispo, transaction coordinating, and support staff. And we've created and we built this machine. And the cool thing about it, it just continues to go and go even without my involvement in it. And I just really work it truly as a COO by watching the numbers and
Mm-hmm.
making decisions based upon that. So,
Nice.
so that's kind of my quick 30, I guess 5 or 10 minute review of things, bro. Of what I've been able to do over the last 27 years. It's a quick snapshot of things.
Well, I really appreciate all the info, and I think that's really helpful for a lot of people who are watching, because it shows that, you've gone through a lot, you've dealt with a lot, but that's just part of being an entrepreneur. You have to be able to deal with things like that, and the fact that you already had a business going at that point, it kind of helped you out to stay afloat and to probably handle a lot of the bills that you were coming across. So that's a really powerful story, and you overcame a lot. And the fact that you've now gotten to the point where you don't even have to be that involved, you've got everything running. That's like what everybody's dream is right there. So that you're not just self-employed, you actually are a business owner. You're running a business, and you own a business. You have people running it for you. That's that's what a lot of people watching this probably want to do. So if you guys like what you're hearing so far, like this video. We're going to get into acquisitions and some of the strategies that Jerry's using, as well as the systems and operations that you need so that you can actually build out your wholesaling business and not just be, completely locked in and always having to be a part of every decision. That's what we're all trying to do, and Jerry's done it. He's figured it out. He's been in the game for a long time. So let's talk about acquisitions. And I know me and you were talking at the mastermind, and I thought it was really enlightening, the stuff you were telling me. But if you want, just take the floor and just kind of talk about what you guys teach on the acquisitions side. Having a hard time saying that word. I know there was something with price qualification, which I thought was really cool. So if you want to just share a little bit about that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. It's pretty cool. Actually, it's interesting. I just finished an acquisitions event actually yesterday. We do a one-day acquisitions training. And what's cool about this is, here's what I've seen, and this is what everybody understands on this. For a period of almost, probably close to 15 years of my career, I've done all the acquisitions myself. So, and I didn't realize until almost, 12 years ago that I really needed to change this to grow and then take it to a whole nother level.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did on that is, of course, I went on a lot of appointments, and I also started doing things. I was one of the original ones that started doing things virtually too, because I was doing virtual deals way before COVID was even thought of.
Right.
And but what I realized was, there was a big need for understanding a true process to acquisitions, because so many people go out there and what they do, like, is they just go out there and they just throw out offers, and
Mm-hmm.
and I started thinking about this and saying, okay, we need to think about this in a way of a true process. If you
Mm-hmm.
look at it, and it goes from everywhere, from the way you think, the way you talk to people, the tone that you have, and everything. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and some of the things that drastically changed on my side of things when I was doing, acquisitions myself. Like I said, I went on thousands of appointments myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized that I had to start just, not be like everybody else. So, one, I changed it from this thinking of constantly making offers, and I changed it to focus of creating solutions. So I thought, okay, let's focus on creating solutions versus just making offers, because anybody can freaking make an offer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and I started thinking, okay, how can we focus on creating solutions? So behind that, what I started realizing that also that what I always look at was all leads follow a path. And that is, if you look at a lead coming in, it's basically going to either be what I call a discount deal or a terms deal or a combination of both. And as a real estate investor, that's the only two real directions you're going to go. There is nothing else. We can do all these different creative strategies, but that's going to tie down to either a discount deal or a terms deal or a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking at that and I said, okay, how can I take this and really start focus on creating solutions for people versus just saying, hey, this is what I can give you for your property. So I changed everything around where I started focusing on, like, number one, I started focusing on programs. Okay. So get this, Mike. So when somebody would come to me about things, let's just say that I was working with a seller and their property, they owed too much on it. So what I would do, I would say, oh, I'm so sorry, Mike. Unfortunately, your property doesn't qualify for our cash out program, but I do have another program that it might qualify for. Would you be interested in hearing more about that option?
Yes.
See how that transitions right over?
Right. Yeah, you're like putting them
Okay.
in channels, right? You're putting them on different paths. It's not just like, oh,
dude.
can I
Yeah.
can I just offer them the right price, or you're putting them through different processes. I like that.
Yeah, it was a total game changer on that side of things. Because everybody else was just, all they were doing is going out and acting like everybody else.
Right.
Yeah, it's what I can give you. And I was totally different. I was like, let me talk about the different programs I have and how I can help you out. And let me show you how this affects you. And it was a total different way of looking at things. Now, another thing too that you just brought up was something I started looking at called price qualifying. Now, I'll tell you where this came from, Mike. This is interesting. So this was back in right in the early 2000s. I was working with a mortgage broker that I had been working with for years about sending them buyers all the time. And I remember being in his office, and I always remember him sitting there with a individual that was going to be borrowing the money. And I remember him saying, hey, he says, let me show you here what you qualify for. And I kept thinking about that, and I thought, what if I changed a little bit of my wording,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started doing the qualifying to my sellers? And it was interesting when I tried this. And I tried it with all different types of sellers. So what I would do, instead of saying, hey, this is what I can offer you for your home, Mike, I would say, Mike, I've looked over the numbers and things, and it looks like I'm trying everything I can, my man. I'm really pushing this for you, but it looks like the best I can get your property qualified for is $65,126. Now,
That's
here's the
genius.
cool thing. Yeah, and Mike, here's the cool thing about it. When I started doing this, I noticed something. Now, it wasn't like it was every single time it didn't work, but it continued to get better and better. And one thing I noticed was this, and that is, you think about the human mind and how it gets trained on things. So if I tell you that I'm going to make you an offer, typically most people have a reaction that they should make a counteroffer.
Mm-hmm.
So what I started doing is I started letting them know what their property qualifies for. Well, the thing is, their mind didn't know how to accept that. So I started noticing that a big chunk of people were never making counteroffers because I never made them an offer.
Right.
So I just told them what their property qualified for.
Right.
And
That's
the
awesome.
cool thing about it, I started noticing a lot of people just coming to me and asking me. So instead of them going and say, well, I need this out of it, and in regard to a counteroffer, they would turn around and say a lot of times, well, is there any way that you can get that qualified for a little bit more? So now they're asking me, and now they're coming to me for help
Mm-hmm.
versus just giving me a counteroffer.
Right.
It was such a game changer on things, brother.
Yeah, it's almost like you're like a mortgage broker. You're going and seeing what they qualify for and what their interest rate is, versus and them just like bargaining and negotiating on a price.
Yeah.
You're making it
Yeah,
seem
absolutely.
almost more like official or standardized. I like that a lot. I thought that was really smart when you told me that, because everyone's doing the same thing. They're calling, they're sending out mail, and they're like, hey, I'll buy your house cash, quick close, I'll pay the closing costs, there's no real estate agent commissions, what's the best cash price you'll take? That's like what a lot of wholesalers are saying. So if you can come at a different angle when you're dealing with the same sellers that all these other wholesalers are talking to, because everyone knows if you're doing deals and you're contacting distressed sellers, tax delinquent, whatever it is, a lot of times they've already spoken with other cash buyers or other wholesalers who are already giving them offers. And if you come from a more like standardized, different approach, I definitely can see that working, because I've tried to do the same thing as well. When I'm speaking with sellers, I would try not to just say the same thing that everyone else is saying. I would really try to let them know that I am the end buyer and that it's not going to be wholesaled, and I would kind of give them some info about wholesaling. And then, just close on the property myself and not do an assignment fee. But with what you're saying, it just makes it look and sound so much more professional and official and more like corporate almost, versus like, one-man band, like trying to bargain you down and trying to like lowball you. It makes them feel like they're being lowballed if you're just throwing a cash offer at them and it's lower than what they want, even though it needs to be at that price based on like logic, because no one's going to go buy a house, put 20, 30, 40 grand into it, and then sell it just to break even. And a lot of times when you explain that to the seller, they get it. They're like, oh, well, I get it. You got to buy it there so you can put the money in and then sell it and make money so it's worth your time. But a lot of times people just get pissed off if you tell them a number and they don't like it, and they're not thinking about what it actually qualifies for in the investor world. We all pretty much are playing by the same rules. We need it, like 60, 70 cents on the dollar so that we have enough room to make a good 20, 30% ROI. But I just love that, the way you do that.
Yeah.
You got any other?
Another thing too, Mike, on that, just a quick on that, what's cool about it too was when I would work with people this way, and I have my team does this right now, and all my students I train this way too. But what's cool about it too is when you do that, it's not about the seller. You're not offending them. What you're doing is if you listen to it, it's what your property qualifies for. So you blame the property, not the seller.
Right, and it takes you out of it in a sense. You're no longer just the one that's responsible for the number that's possibly hurting their feelings. You're kind of taking the human element out of it in a sense. And they have to deal with it a little bit more logically. I like that a lot. That's genius.
It's something that I just it was funny on that. There's so many little things I added in on this whole acquisitions process, and literally I watched my conversions go up to the point of I was probably closing out close to 80% or more of my appointments.
That's awesome. So with like your acquisitions coaching, do you have like scripts, or do you have like a training, or how does that look on that?
Yeah, so a couple things we do on that. One of the things we do a live training. I also have recordings for live training that, sometimes people say, well, I don't want to wait for the next training. They just want to get access to the recordings of the training. So what I do is it's an all one-day event. And like I said, I just wrapped one up yesterday. I actually do it in my office. And I do it in my office, and then a lot of people train virtually as well. But what we do is I actually start off with going through like the mindset that what I look at, and it's entitled, the title to it is How Does 10X Your Acquisition Skills? And what I look at is starting off with the mindset, I go through what it takes to be great at acquisitions. And one of the things I share on this, Mike, is like, I tell people, I said, look, and I just done this yesterday. In fact, what I did was I put a piece of tape on the floor in my event space that I have in my office. And I said, look, on this side of the tape is average salespeople, average acquisition people. Average people are going to make $50,000, $60,000 a year. I said, if you apply the things that I am going to teach you, now, and this might be somebody that's working for someone, so, and I look at it, if you're just an average acquisitions rep and you're just working off commissions only, not including what you would make off the deals if you're actually, own the business. Then I said, if you step over that line and you commit to really mastering a sales process, you're talking revenues from going from 50 to 60,000 being a rep to $250,000 a year to 300,000 a year. And it's all based upon understanding really what it takes to be good at acquisition. So I go through that side of things. Then we go through an actual sales process that I designed, and I broke it down into 2 steps. So it's got 2 steps to it. And the reason I've done it in 2 steps on this, Mike, is because what I started watching over the years is so many people get caught up in what I call the rehab rabbit hole. So the rehab rabbit hole. So think about this. You get on the call with the seller, and then because you're afraid of things, you go to the easiest discussion there is, and that is the condition of the property. And then you'll get into that discussion, and you might spend 30, 40 minutes on that phone call, and you don't even know if the seller's motivated.
Yep.
Is that true?
You got to find the problem. Definitely.
Right.
I've done that before too, and then you find out you're dealing with someone who is not even interested in selling quickly, and they're going to just go get a real estate agent anyway. You got to find out that motivation and what the problem behind it all is, for sure.
So what we really dialed in my sales process is I go through, my goal is to get my students and my team within 5 to 7 minutes to determine either to exit off the phone or take it to part 2.
Right.
And then what happens on that, you save so much time on that. So then we go through that, then we really get into talking about, the virtual process, which I share everybody on that. And I share, how to maximize your results on appointments. And then we bring it full circle and we get into renegotiating the deals too.
Okay.
So we talk about, after inspections, and now you're struggling with something. How do you get a seller to come down without offending them?
Right.
Okay. And then the final component of my training is then we take it into what I call deal structuring. So now what we do is we take what I look at as something, what I like to look at as the goal is to become a deal engineer. So to become a deal engineer, you have to understand, 1, the psychology and the sales process, and then you start building what I call deal structure. By doing that, you become the deal engineer. That way, as you look at things, all these leads coming in, there's multiple ways you can help a seller out, and by doing that, you set yourself apart from like 90% of the people out there. And then your conversions go up, you make more money, and ultimately, that's how you're really scaling and building things that way.
So you go and you talk about structuring deals that maybe wouldn't work for a lot of wholesalers who just need it at, they needed X amount, or let's say the person still owes money on the property. So you help them come up with different terms or maybe subject to deals as well? Yeah,
correct. Yep.
Okay.
And it all comes down, and that's why I've said earlier, that's where the beauty comes in, where it's like that transition, like, Mike, I'm so sorry, but your property doesn't qualify for our cash out program. But, Mike, I do have another program that I might be able to help you out with if you're interested in hearing more about it.
Right.
Yep. Nice. Just think if you're a seller and you actually have, if you're truly a motivated seller, and now you're letting them know, you just gave them disappointment and you done a takeaway, but now all of a sudden you just put something on the table and you invited them. Now all they have to do is accept and invite you in.
Right. Nice. So let's talk a little bit about, unless you have anything else you want to talk about acquisitions, any other?
Well, it's just, to kind of give you a little brief summary of things, that's kind of where we look at on things. But remember, in my training, it's about 7 to 8 hours long. So.
Gotcha. All right, so let's talk a little bit about systems and operations, because obviously that's definitely needed if you want to build a business and not just be running like a one-man show, doing all the deals yourself. So how did you, what did it feel really difficult for you at that point when you drew that line in the sand, or so to speak, and you said, I'm not doing X, Y, Z? how long it took you, like you said, 15 years or so before you finally decided to do that. Like, how hard was that to find someone who you could bring in to handle the sales side of things and the operation side?
Well, what was interesting, Mike, I had built the team prior to that. But the team I built, I even had a lady, I had one lady who was with me for 12 years. I had another gentleman that was with me from the beginning for 15 years, and I had to let these people go. And it was tough. In fact, the gentleman that was with me was the best man in my wedding. So it
Wow.
was, but here's what happened on this, so everybody understands this. So I had this business going. I had multiple rehabs going. I was doing all this stuff. But the thing is, Mike, everything was coming back to me, all decisions and all this. Okay, it was constant. So a deal would come in. They go, Jerry, what do you want to do with this deal? And then I would get in this position where I was trying to figure out what to do with it. Should we fix it up? Should we wholesale it? Should we do it as a rental? All this stuff here. And I realized that, I just got to the point where it was such a grind. I was like, this just doesn't make sense. It's not really a business here.
Right.
It's like, here I am, a caretaker for all these people, and they're all depending on me to make decisions all the time. And so what I really ended up looking at, Mike, was this. And no joke on this, I actually drew a line down a center of a piece of paper. And on one side, I wrote real estate, and on the other side, I wrote business. And I said, wait a minute. What I'm doing here, all these years, I've been in the real estate side. And I see people do this all the time, where they get caught up in the real estate side. What they're doing is constantly chasing deals and doing all the things related to that.
Well said.
So I jumped over on the other side, and I said, wait a minute. What if I focus on the business side of this, and I just let real estate become a product? No different if I was in the cell phone business. And I thought, let's look at this as a product. So I started looking that way, and then I started looking at, wait a minute, I started putting in like API tracking and all this here. The next thing I know, all the team that I had, they were basically they were riding the Jerry wave for all these years, and all the smoke and mirrors went away when I started putting in all this tracking. And next thing I know, man, I got to the point where I thought, I've got to really kind of clean house and start over again. And what I did, Mike, I went in and started looking at, okay, let's find people's unique abilities. Let's put them in the proper box. And then we started putting them in the proper box. And then we started making sure that they had the proper KPI for tracking, for accountability purposes. And then we started focusing heavy on the training. And then next thing you know, I realized that even though I was really good at sales, I could train others to step in and take over things. And then it just continued to grow. Then I realized that one of the big realizations for me was realizing that I was more of a visionary, and I could think of all these ideas, but when it come to executing the overall plan, I would get so far and I would stop. And then I would switch gears and do something else. I was always chasing the shiny object on things. So what I ended up doing was a lady that had been working with me for several years, I went to her and basically asked her if she wanted to look at becoming a manager. And then she went from manager to general manager to today, and she's been with me now over 8 years. Her name's Ashley, and she actually runs my organization as my COO. And literally, she runs the complete operational side of things, like from beginning to end, and she has team members and what I've learned is that I have to work through her, and then she communicates to the team.
Right. Yep. Well, I'm sure that's what a lot of people watching right now are trying to figure out. I know a lot of people probably feel nervous to hire somebody to do it, like they're not going to do as good a job that you were going to do, or can I really trust them with my leads? Are they going to just take my leads and my buyers and all that? But that's just part of it. And then once you can come to terms with that, you can actually start building the team and start building a business and get out of that, deal chasing mentality. I like the way you put it. You're in the real estate game or you're in the, business game. And a lot of people are so focused on the deal, the comps, the offer, the rehab money, or whatever. and forget that the idea is to have freedom and grow a business. And if you look at it more from like what you just said, just look at it as a business. It doesn't matter what the thing is that you're selling or wholesaling. It could be, products that you sell on Amazon. It could be real estate. You're wholesaling real estate. It's really just a numbers game. And I think by looking at it like that, it kind of changes, changes your perspective on it. And then it allows you to take that step back, hire people. Yeah, it's definitely good advice.
What's interesting, Mike, is on this, and this I see this all the time, and people come and they say, I don't know if I really want to make the investment into, hiring somebody or pay for someone. And first thing I always take, I'll say, well, what's interesting is this. You'll go out and drop a bundle for marketing.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you something. Investing into people is more valuable than marketing any day. Because if you invest into the right person, you're going to see a return because of the time it gives back to you, and you're going to be able to then really grow the business. Okay?
Right.
And Mike, if you don't mind, let me share with you something here, and something I want all the listeners to think about. There's 4 phases to a business. First one we look at is launch phase. A lot of people are getting started, they're launching things, getting things going, okay? Pretty well doing everything themselves. Then they go into growth phase. As they go into growth phase, now they're starting to see increased revenues, maybe they're doing more deals, maybe they're bringing in 1 or 2 team members, helping them out on things, maybe some VAs or something like that. And then they look at it and say, okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to phase number 4, and I'm going to skip over phase number 3. I'm going to go right to phase number 4, and phase number 4 is scale. So they want to go right into scaling. But what happens is when they go into scaling and they skip over 3, which I'll tell you 3 in just a second here, when they jump over into 4 and they go to scale, right from growth to scale, what happens is a lot of times it creates all this chaos, and they're really scaling chaos, and it just comes all back on them again.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I do that? Because I've done that, and I've watched a lot of students I work with do that too. But here's phase number 3 that nobody really talks about. And phase number 3 is called the constraint phase. And it's learning how to put constraints on yourself and your business. So what happens is when you do that, you can actually take the business to scale afterwards. Because if you think about this, Mike, if you're, for example, a lot of people on here are probably listening where they get leads coming in, and every time they get a lead come in, they're like, should I fix it up? Should I rent it? Should I wholesale it? Should I wholesale it? Whatever, all that stuff's decided up front. And you lay it out, and then you empower a team, and you just take yourself out of the decision process. And what happens on that, man, it actually becomes a system, and then the team understands the system, they understand the vision, and it's a game changer on things. And it's just like now, I don't consult on a deal unless it's a bigger deal that I'm going to hold. Other than that, I don't do that. The team does it, and it's automatic. The decisions, boom, boom, boom. That's the production process.
So you're taken out of the deciding on the price or the offer or what you're going to sell it, how you're going to sell it. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, all that, man. And it is so freeing on that side of things, Mike, because what happens then I'm just looking at reporting. I'm looking at financials. I'm looking at, and we do the team does a daily KPI reporting, and the daily KPI tracker, I just work on that online every day, and I see if the team is moving in the right direction or if there's a concern. If there's a concern, I get a hold of my COO. Other than that, I stay out of it.
Nice. So how often do you ever see where a deal was made, or maybe it was too small of a deal, or, are you ever run into issues like that where you've trained people to just make the decision, but maybe, they're taking too low of a price or whatever it might be? Do you ever run into any issues like that?
I did at first, but that's part of putting the constraints in, because part of the constraint is you set minimum profit margins.
Okay.
And as long as that's in place, then they're empowered to do it. And then also, the more they make on the spread of the deal, the more they receive also.
Did you want to talk any more about systems and operations? Did you have any other things you wanted to add?
I think a big thing, Mike, is that people just have to realize that the grind will only get you so far.
Right.
And what I found was that grinding in this real estate business for a period of time, it reaches a cap. Typically, I see a cap of somewhere in the neighborhood of about $300 to $350,000 in revenue, total revenue, or so into the business. And it depends on your market a little bit. Higher end markets, you might be a little bit more working it by yourself. But the thing is, by just simply understanding that you can turn around and literally make some tweaks, and typically no more than maybe two hires away, and putting in also the actual full operating system with processes on it, you can take it to $1 million a year and work less.
Right. But people just don't want to relinquish that control. It's that fear of the unknown. What'll happen? Will they screw me over? Or are they going to just, offer? Are they going to screw the offers up? Whatever. Like all these thoughts people have, and that's what pretty much stops them from building out a team and then getting more freedom, because that's the whole idea. Quit getting out of the 9 to 5 and doing your own thing, is so you have that freedom, but you don't want to get to the point where you're just self-employed and you're burning yourself out. And what would you say would be like the first 2 hires for somebody who's, maybe they've done a handful of deals or a dozen deals or so, and they're working a 9 to 5 currently? What do you think is like the first or second hire that they need to be? I would think, if you've got a VA, that's great. I would think acquisitions would be like the first thing, like someone who can be like the sales manager and handle the following up, the calling, the comping, the making offers and all that side of things. Because that's what I experienced. That's what I had at one point. Was working with the VA, and I felt like the next step really that would have given me what I was looking for would have been to hire an acquisitions manager and like actually have a sales team or a sales manager to handle that side of things.
Yep. Well, here's what I look at. Is most of the time, typically the first hire I usually look at is typically like an assistant / transaction coordinator. Okay, and here's the reason for that. Is because we get caught up in all these little small things that are not going to move the needle in the business.
Yep.
And so we're doing all these little things that we shouldn't be doing. And I see this all the time with people. But what happens is once you get that assistant / TC, and I tell people, if you can do it, I recommend a local assistant, because it frees you up so much. And I'm not just talking about business stuff too. I'm talking about them helping on a personal assistance type of stuff too. You'd be amazed, but what happens is a lot of people say, well, I don't think I have that much stuff. You wouldn't believe how many people I've helped through coaching or different programs they went through. And I said, get an assistant. We're going to let them do this, any type of admin stuff, and we're going to let them handle the transaction coordinating. And then what will happen at the same time, we're going to start having them help you find an acquisitions rep. Because what happens is now, because if you think about it, if you continue down the same path, what happens is you bring an acquisitions rep in, and let's just say that you're doing all the marketing and you're doing all the interviewing. Why not have an assistant help you with that?
Right, put out the mail or whatever it is that you're doing for the marketing side of things.
Even helping filter in somebody into the hiring spot for like acquisitions. Okay,
yep.
So I've seen it literally, Mike. I've had one of my couple guys I'm working with right now out of Florida. They're in South Florida, and they're in the position right now where I just had them restructure and we're rebuilding their whole team. They had a first hire was an assistant. Now they just hired recently an acquisitions person. Now they're in the process of hiring a second acquisitions person. And their business is already, sales have went up by 4x just in the last about 3 months.
That's awesome. And what are they doing for marketing? What are they doing for like lead gen?
They do a little mixture of things. They do some direct mail and they do some pay-per-click as well. So
Nice. Very
yeah,
cool.
so yeah, yeah. So I think first hire. And here's what I always tell everybody. I tell people if I had because I was down to the point I had to restart all over again, and let's just say that I was down to $10,000 left over in my account, and that's all I had. And people say, "What would you do?" I would hire an assistant.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how helpful that would be because a lot of those little things, you need to do it. You're the one that has to do everything. You got to coordinate the marketing side of things, coordinate the hiring of the acquisitions manager. But if you had an assistant, you could do things so much faster because you could literally just tell them what to do, what needs to be done regularly, weekly, daily, whatever. And then you can continue to give them more things and more things. And that's just how it is in any business. I mean, like in this business at Fund&Grow, we've got over 50 employees, and our executive assistant helps us like spearhead and move like a lot of different projects forward. And if it was all on me or Ari and we were the only ones that were doing it, we would get way less things done and be way
100%.
way disorganized. Like you said, it's like you've got the people that are more on the visionary side that are kind of, pushing the wagon. And then there's the people who are, helping to move those different ideas forward. You can't do it all yourself. So I could see how having an assistant, I had a virtual assistant for a while. It was super helpful. It made me feel like I didn't have to do anything except, the hard part of the deal. But having a local assistant would be much better. And even if it's remote, right? It's not like everyone's going to have a storefront office that's doing this. You could easily, find someone that can do it remotely.
100%,
And
man.
yeah, I like what you're saying. It's really good. I know it's helpful for me, and I'm sure like anyone who's watching that is in the real estate game, wholesaling, whatever. This is all really, really good advice. So thank you very much for sharing all that stuff with us. It's been really
Mike, I just want, here's the thing I want people to realize, okay? There's very few people out there, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but there's very few people out there that have been doing this for 27 years
right.
that have survived multiple market cycles and been able to be in a position where, they still come out on head and everything that I went through. And what I've realized, guys, is you are in a position where you really got to start understanding what the value of your time is. And if your value of your time, if you're doing admin tasks, I'm not knocking admin, but when I'm looking at, you've worked your butt off and you've invested in training and everything else. You need to look at something. You need to start elevating your game, and you got to start doing your time differently. And I'm just telling you, man, after all these years of doing this and a lot of hard knocks and a lot of lost money and everything else, build it and build it right and build it now. A lot of people say, well, how soon should I build it? I said, why not now? Why try to go out there and do it all on your own? It's funny. I got two people right now I'm working with that are part of a coaching program that I have that are in a position where they're actually building. They know the real estate business. They've been doing some deals on their own. They have 0 team members, and they're wanting to take it and build a team out right away. And I said, let's do it. So we're going to massively build their team out over 6 months.
And you said that they haven't done any deals yet?
They've done some deals, but they've done just a few by themselves. But what I'm doing is they just look up and they said, what their thinking was this. They said, Jared, they said, you have a system, you have a process. Why should we have to go out there and grind for 10 years to get to just one portion, get to your level? And I said, that's exactly right. Why can't we do it now? Okay? And everybody tries to make this so difficult. And I just look at it, I said, guys, you can take a system that works. Think about this, Mike. If you have a model, a very good franchise model, and the processes are in place, okay, why would you, are you going to wait to grow your business and increase revenues? No, you're going to do it now.
Right. Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. It makes a lot of sense. I think it's just the fear people might have, like, especially if it's someone that's, they've only done a couple deals. I would imagine the first thing that people would think of that would keep them in their comfort zone is like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to generate enough, traffic or have enough leads to justify hiring people. I've only done a handful of deals myself, and I've done that over the course of 6 months. How am I going to hire somebody if I don't really have flow right now? Like, how does that for that person? Right, that's because there's probably a ton of people that have done a handful of deals, maybe a dozen deals or so, and they're just like, how do I hire someone now? I don't have enough consistent flow. I got to build that up myself first, and then I can hire people. But that seems nearly impossible if I'm, working at another job, running a job, I have another job. How am I going to build that out, and get it to the point where it makes sense to hire somebody? But what you're saying is, just like when you buy a McDonald's franchise, you're not the only one in there flipping burgers until there's,
Absolutely.
traffic. You've just got to get the people in place and then bring the traffic in, right? And that might mean that you've got to pay people, without making a deal right away, right? Like if you don't have marketing set up to where you're just generating a ton of leads, I think that's a big thing. Like a lot of people might be held back by the fact that they might not have the cash flow to generate the traffic and the lead flow to justify hiring somebody. So what would you say to that person who, doesn't have the flow? What should they do? Should they, put a budget aside for more marketing, or should they do more? Should they do pay per click? Should they start cold calling? Like,
Here's what I look at on this. First of all, obviously, I want somebody to get out there and just get deals going, okay, and make it happen. And I think that's good for everyone to learn that side of things and just get that rolling. But the thing is, as soon as you get that rolling and you realize you can make money with it, and what you have to do is you have to realize that the only limitation on doing more is the capacity side of things. So how do we eliminate the capacity side? It comes down through systems, the overall operating system, backed by processes, and then start bringing in the people component. And that's what people have to realize. And what's funny on this too, man, is like this is a business. I worked with a gentleman that built up a company to from basically zero to over $300 million in sales on an annual basis. And one of the things he was telling me about on things, he says, Jerry, if you look back on things and you start studying people, entrepreneurs that take the risk, and typically what most risks come down to is a financial commitment. Once they make the financial commitment, there's no turning back. And what's interesting, people that have not had those successes are the ones that never made the made the commitment. And it could be, and like you say, it's another thing too. I'm sure you've heard of Brian Tracy, right? Okay. Yep. Back in early 2000s, I was really, I had an opportunity to work with Brian Tracy for a full year. And, Brian's well known for 40 plus years, books and stuff, and everything he's done, business coaching and everything. And I'll never forget something he told me. He says, Jerry, the number one reason is why people never become financially independent. He says, what do you think that is? And I started, and it was myself and several other people. He said, what is the number one reason why people never become financially independent? And he said, because they never make the decision to do it.
Yep, that couldn't be more true. People don't want to, they're scared to get out of what they're in. If they're working a 9 to 5, whatever it is, they're just scared to take that leap of faith and have that blind faith on, that commitment. But once you make the commitment, it'll all come together. If you focus on what you're going after. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say, think about this. It is easier to be 100% committed than it is 98%.
Right. The back and forth tennis match, that you have when you're 98%.
Because when you're 98%, and dude, I know what it's like, and I know a lot of viewers probably go through this, but when you're 98%, you fall into what we call decision fatigue. And decision fatigue will destroy you if you allow it.
Yep. Well, if you're watching and you're in a situation where you're thinking about hiring a team and you're thinking about growing the business like we're talking about, this couldn't be a better time. You're hearing it from somebody who's dealt with it. 27 years he's been in real estate. So if you guys like what you're hearing, like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you're not already subscribed. There's going to be a link in the description of the video so that you guys can connect with Jerry and talk more about acquisitions, processes, systems, operations, the whole 9 yards, so that you can actually build out a business and get that freedom that you're looking for. That's what we're all looking for. That's why most people, that's why we get into real estate or anything entrepreneurial. It's about freedom. So don't forget that, because if you get caught up in the grind, deal chasing, you end up just being in another form of the rat race where you're self-employed instead of employed. Jerry, thank you very much for your time. Do you have any last minute words or anything you wanted to share with people before we wrap this up?
The biggest thing is, first of all, I want to thank you, Mike, for
Thank
allowing
you.
me to share here. And I just want to say to everybody, guys, look, don't get in this position where you get into what I call the whole regret thing, where I always look at it this way. There's so many people that say, look, I don't want to invest in things. I don't want to invest in myself. Well, at some point in time, you're going to write a check, and that check's going to be the check of regret. So, do things, do it now. You know what happened in my life with my first wife and everything, changed like that. You guys, make things happen, make it now. And by doing that, you'll make a bigger impact. And it's not just about the money, it's about the impact you're going to make on the people around you and your family. So do it. Just make it happen, guys. And, that's kind of my last words of wisdom there. And realize that all of us started at some point. But if we didn't start, we wouldn't be here today.
Right, exactly. A lot of us know, we have something we want to do, and we know, like, when we're not doing the thing we know we should be doing, it kind of eats away at you, right? It's not that accomplished feeling or that feeling of success where you're actually taking the action in the way that you should be, or otherwise you feel like you're kind of, shortchanging yourself, and it's not the best place to be. You would feel way better about life if you just do the thing you need to do. And that's kind of what we're talking about, building out a team, taking that next step. Or even for people that are watching, maybe you haven't gotten into real estate yet, or you haven't done a wholesale deal yet, and you're kind of right on that verge. Take the leap of faith, take action. It doesn't have to be perfect. Get your feet wet, and then you'll figure it out as you go. And the same thing goes with building a team. It's what we're all looking for. So I would definitely recommend going to the link in the description, talk with Jerry and his team, see if there's any way that they can help you guys build out your systems and your acquisitions team. I know I'll be talking more with Jerry about it after this. This was a really great interview, so thank you. You brought a lot of really valuable content. Hopefully you guys like it, and drop a comment below if you have any other questions or anything that you wanted to share about what you heard today.
Mike, I just want to share one other thing. The link that I shared with you guys is it's actually a link for an event I have coming up my office here in Miamisburg, Ohio next month. And what I do is I do a small group. Typically, we keep it to about 20 people. It's a small group, and what we do is we bring in, you spend 2 days with my whole team and I and learn our systems. And then on day 2, what we do is actually lay out a game plan for you to basically go out and implement how to take your real estate business and actually apply what we teach you. And you walk out with a to-do list of what you need to do to kick it into the next, basically into the next gear.
Are they able to do that virtually as well through that link?
Now that particular event is really the type that needs to be in person, because we work with you so much personally that's how we make the big impact.
Okay, and if anybody's watching this, let's say it's months down the road from now, we'll set it up so that link will redirect to another page. It'll either be another event or another way of connecting with Jerry and his team. So thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for sharing everything you did. It was a really great interview. And hopefully you guys liked it. If you did, like the video, subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. Have a great rest of your day.